Hello everyone, Dana here from Dana's Electrical Services, and in today's video I will demonstrate and show you how to know if your capacitor is faulty or good. Alright, so the first thing you want to do when you're working with capacitors is ensure that your capacitor is safely discharged, right? So you want to go ahead and measure the voltage of your capacitor right across the terminal. Ensure that the voltage meter is within the range of your capacitor. This one is 440 volts AC. My meter is auto ranging, so I'm going to go ahead and put it across the terminals of my capacitor. If I get 0 volts, I know that my capacitor is fully discharged. If I get a reading, that means that my capacitor is not discharged and needs to be discharged. So you're going to safely discharge your capacitor by putting a load across the terminals and ensure that it is discharged. And then after you put the load across it, you're going to test again and ensure that you get 0. Also ensure that the load that you put across this capacitor, it can bear the voltage that is across the terminals of the capacitor. Alright, so after you ensure that your capacitor is discharged, the first thing you're going to do is do a physical test on your capacitor, right? So you're going to examine your capacitor. By the way, this is a new capacitor, so I know that it is good. I had some bad capacitors, but unfortunately I throw them away in the garbage, and now I don't have them to demonstrate to you what exactly bad capacitors look like. But I will tell you, and based on what I tell you, you should know what I'm talking. Okay, so physical test. Check if your capacitor is swollen, and this principle is for all capacitors, whether it's the cylindrical type or it's the cube type. It doesn't matter. Cylinder, cube, the principle remains the same. So check if your capacitor is swollen. Your capacitor should not have any bulge at the top or at the side or at the bottom. It should have this cylinder look, just like all the other types of capacitor. And as I said, the principle remains the same. It doesn't matter the type of capacitor. The next thing you want to do is look if you see any fluid leaking from the capacitor, right? Check if you see any fluid leaking from this. Mostly happen at the top of the capacitor. You'll see like some fluid leaking. That's the second thing you look for. The next thing is if your capacitor looks burnt. So if it looks or smells burnt, you have a faulty capacitor, right? So your capacitor shouldn't have any burnt look on it. It's either bad or it's going bad, right? So those are the 3 physical tests. If it is swollen, if fluid is leaking, or if it is burnt, then you have a faulty capacitor or a capacitor that is on its way to being faulty. The second thing, this is not always the case though, but you can do a continuity test on the capacitor. If you go across the 2 terminals of the capacitor and you get continuity, you have a bad capacitor. You should not get a continuity across the 2 terminals of the capacitor, right? If you get something like this, you have a bad capacitor. You should get no continuity across the 2 terminals of the capacitor. And the final test to fully confirm if you have a good or a faulty capacitor is to do a capacitance test. So this capacitor is 15 microfarad, right? And it has a tolerance of plus or minus 5%. So I should get a reading within that tolerance. So if I just put my terminals across my capacitor, as you can see here, I get a capacitance of 14.8485. It's fluctuating between 84 to 86 microfarad. So 14.85 microfarad. So this is a good capacitor because it is within the tolerance. And if you get a capacitance outside of the 15 microfarad with the plus or minus 5% tolerance, this confirms that you have a faulty capacitor. So just to run over them quickly, how do you know that you have a bad or a faulty capacitor? If it is swollen, or you see fluid leaking, in most cases from the top, if it looks and smells or smell burnt, if you get a continuity across the two terminals, or if the capacitance is out of the range, then that tells you that you have a faulty capacitor. So that is it, guys, and this was another video brought to you by Daniel's Electrical Services. For more videos like these, please feel free to subscribe to my channel at Daniel's Electrical Services. Thank you.